butterfly shape. They are located just inferior to the larynx, that is voice box. It composed of two lobes, right and left lobes, and these lobes are connected by isthmus. And these also have the supply of artery and veins. Now, after seeing the external anatomy of the thyroid gland, we'll see the internal anatomy of thyroid gland. So internally, thyroid gland mainly composed of follicles. There are the millions of follicles which are present in the thyroid gland. So each follicle is surrounded mainly by simple cuboidal epithelium and is filled with the colloid, which is a sticky material. And inside that colloid, mainly the composed of thyroglobulin. And this thyroglobulin is mainly responsible for the production of T3 and T4 hormone, which is called as a thyroid hormone. And the surrounding wall of the simple cuboidal epithelium is also important for the thyroglobulin production, iodide intake, and thyroid hormone release. Even with this follicular cell, there are the parafollicular cell is also present inside the thyroid gland. And this parafollicular cell is responsible for the production of another hormone that is also important for our body. Now we'll see about the thyroid hormones. The hormones which are released by the thyroid gland. There are the three types of hormone which are released by the thyroid gland. So follicular cell of the thyroid gland secretes hormone known as a triiodothyronine T3 and tetraiodothyronine, which is called as a T4. The tetraiodothyronine also known as thyroxine. The role of T3 and T4 is very important for growth, development and metabolism. So another type of hormone which is produced by the thyroid gland called as a calcitonin. And this calcitonin is important regulator of the calcium level in our body. And these are secreted by parafollicular cell of thyroid. But out of these three hormones, the first two, that is T3 and T4, are considered as a thyroid hormone. And the calcitonin is considered along with the parathormone, which is secreted by the parathyroid gland for the calcium regulation. So here basically we are going to study about the in detail T3 and T4 hormone. Now we'll see the biosynthesis of thyroid hormones. We already studied this in endocrine system chapter of anatomy and physiology. Let's revise it again. The diagram in front of you have steps of thyroid hormone synthesis. So first step of this is iodide trapping. As we know, the iodine is necessary for the synthesis of T3 and T4. We take iodine from the external sources such as from food or iodine supplement. And from food through GI tract, it enters into the systemic circulation. When it reaches to the thyroid gland with the blood, it gets trapped by the follicle cells of the thyroid gland. This trapping takes place with the help of basement membrane protein called as sodium iodine symporter. Then iodide enter into the lumen of follicle cuboidal epithelium. Simultaneously, there is a second step also occurs, which is called as the synthesis of thyroglobulin. While the follicular cells are trapping iodide, they are also synthesizing thyroglobulin and packaging into the secretory vesicle. The vesicle then undergo exocytosis, which release the thyroglobulin into the lumen of the follicle. Once this step occurs, the third step begins, that is called as the oxidation of iodide. Iodine trapped by the follicle cell is carried across the apical membrane by another transporter known as pendrin. So there is a iodide oxidized by membrane enzyme thyroid peroxidase to the various byproducts and with the help of hydrogen peroxide. And there is also formation of iodine molecule. Once there is a formation of iodine molecules takes place, next step will occur, which is called as iodination of tyrosine. They react with the tyrosine that are a part of thyroglobulin molecule. Binding of one iodine atom yields monoiodotyrosine and the second iodination produces diiodotyrosine. The thyroglobulin with attached iodine atom accumulates and stored in the lumen of the thyroid follicle. Is termed as a colloid. This whole process is called as a iodide organification. After iodide organification, next steps takes place, that is coupling of T1 and T2. Two molecule of diiodotyrosine combines with the thyroglobulin to form the T4. Similarly, one molecule of monoiodotyrosine and one molecule of the diiodotyrosine combines to form a T3. Once the coupling reaction occurs, the next step occurs that is called as pinocytosis and digestion of colloid. In that, droplet of colloid re-enter into the follicular cell by the pinocytosis and merge with the lysosomes. Digestive enzyme in the lysosome breaks down thyroglobulin and cleaving of molecules of T3 and T4 as well as DIT and MIT. So out of that, DIT and MIT are deiodinated within the gland and the iodine is reutilized. The T3 and T4 are get secreted. That is the next step, secretion of thyroid hormone. T3 and T4 are lipid soluble. Because of that, they are able to diffuse through the plasma membrane into the interstitial fluid and then into the blood. T4 normally secrete in the greater quantity than T3, but T3 is several times more potent. Once this T4 enter to the target organ, it get converted into T3 by the deiodination process. So once they enters into the blood, they require the transporter for transport because they are lipid soluble. So they require the transporter protein named as a thyroxine binding globulin. And with the help of that transporter, they will reach to the target organ. Now we'll see transport, metabolism and excretion of thyroid hormone. The thyroid hormones are highly bound to the plasma protein. If you compare T4 and T3, T4 is having high plasma protein binding. So only 0.04% of T4 and 0.2% of T3 are available in the free form. So main plasma proteins that bind with the T4 are thyroxine binding globulin, that is TBG, and thyroxine binding prealbumin and albumin. Next we are going to talk about the metabolism. Metabolism occurs by deiodination and conjugation. So T4 is deiodinated to the T3. The primary site of the deiodination is liver, as well as other sites are also there like salivary gland, kidney. The conjugated product of metabolism are excreted in the bile and they undergo the deconjugation, and after deconjugation they again enter into the enterohepatic circulation, and from there they finally excreted into the urine. In the thyroid hormone regulation, hypothalamus and anterior pituitary playing an important role. Whenever there is a disturbance in the homeostasis, that is decrease in the level of T3 and T4 concentration in the blood, the hypothalamus get activated by the chemoreceptor. So hypothalamus in response release the TRH, that is thyrotropin releasing hormone, via the primary hypophyseal plexus enter into the anterior pituitary. In the anterior pituitary, there are the thyrotropes. These thyrotropes, in response to the TRH, will release the TSH, that is thyroid stimulating hormone. This thyroid stimulating hormones enters into the bloodstream via the systemic circulation. It will reach to the thyroid gland, and once it will reach to the thyroid gland, it will bind to the receptor of TSH which are present on the thyroid gland. So, bind to the thyroid gland. In response to the TSH, thyroid gland will produce the T3 and T4. The level of T3 and T4 again reach to the normal, and these T3 and T4 normal level will cause the inhibition of the hypothalamus and anterior pituitary secretion. Thyroid hormone action. As thyroid hormone is very important hormone in our body, they play important role in various functions of our body. So here we're going to look towards their functions in detail. So thyroid hormone, how they will going to act? They will act via the receptor. All these receptors present on the cells, where these T3 hormone will going to bind and they will show the response. So first such an action is metabolism. So metabolism is very important for cell. So every cell are doing this particular process. So in the cell, there are the various types of metabolism takes place, like lipid metabolism, carbohydrate and protein. And thyroid have a very important role in all these three types of metabolism. So every cell will have the receptor for thyroid hormone for such a metabolism. So first of all, we'll see the action of thyroid hormone on the lipid metabolism. So thyroid hormone indirectly enhance the lipolysis, and in some cells they are also responsible for the lipogenesis. Even they are also carry out the metabolism of cholesterol. Even they are responsible for the reduction of LDL. So all these are effects seen on the lipid metabolism. Next, that is carbohydrate metabolism. In that they stimulate the metabolism of carbohydrate. So because of that, there will be the release of glucose will takes place, and these glucose will utilized by the tissue. So now, if metabolism gets stimulated, more amount of glucose will form and more amount of utilization by the tissue. Similarly, for the production of glucose, they also stimulate the glycogenolysis and gluconeogenesis, as well as they act on the GI tract for the faster absorption of the glucose. They also have the role in the protein metabolism. In the protein, they mainly have the role of catabolism. In that, they will carry out the breakdown of proteins. If their action remains prolonged, means if there is a hyperthyroidism case, in that if there is an increase in the T3 and T4 amount, it will cause the much more catabolism of protein, and that will lead to the negative nitrogen balance, as well as there is a tissue wasting. So in the next column, if you are able to see, if there is a hypothyroidism, what will occur, and if there is a hypothyroidism, what can occur. So if there is a hypothyroidism, in the cases of lipid metabolism, we can able to see there is a hypercholesteremia, because we already seen that cholesterol metabolism are get accelerated in the presence of T3 and T4. Similarly, in the cases of carbohydrate metabolism, the diabetic-like state will occur because much more amount of glucose will enter into the blood, and that will cause the increase in the blood sugar. In the cases of protein metabolism, if there is a hyperthyroidism, it will show the weight loss because more amount of proteins will get breakdown. Next effect of T3 and T4 is calorogenesis. As we seen, T3 and T4 increases the basal metabolic rate by stimulation of cellular metabolism. And due to increase in the cellular metabolism, there is an increase in the body temperature. And this effect is known as calorogenesis. So T3 and T4 plays an important role in the temperature regulation. Next, effect of T3 and T4 on the cardiovascular system. So this T3 and T4 is directly involved in the stimulation of the heart by acting on the myocardium. In that, they are activating the myosin, which is a contractile element, as well as they have another mechanism to increase the heart rate by upregulation of beta adrenergic receptor. So ultimately, by stimulating the heart, there is an increase in the heart rate, contractility and output. So that will result into the increase in the pulse rate also. Next, effect on the nervous system. Thyroid hormone is very important for the functioning of the nervous system. During the childhood, thyroid hormone is very important for the development of central nervous system. Next effect on the skeletal muscle. In the skeletal muscle, this thyroid hormone again helps in the contraction of the muscles. Similarly, this thyroid hormone receptor are also present on the GI tract, where it acts on the GI smooth muscles, and that will cause the increase in their contraction. So they are helpful for the increase in the propulsive activity. Next, thyroid hormone effect on the reproductive system. Thyroid hormone indirectly involved in the reproductive functions. They are responsible for the maintenance of pregnancy and lactation. If T3 and T4 hormones are decreased in the women, there is a chances of impaired female fertility. Even there is a problem with the menstruation cycle can occur with the decrease in the thyroid hormone. Next, effect on the kidney. As such, normal T3 and T4 level will cause no problem in the urine formation. But in the cases of hypothyroidism, they can lead to the diuresis. Next, effect on the blood formation, that is hematopoiesis. They facilitate the erythropoiesis. So mainly the patient who are having the anemia, they are prescribed with this thyroid hormone medications. Next important effect of the thyroid hormone is growth and development. As we seen, thyroid hormone is very important for every cells for their metabolism. Even central nervous system is also required the thyroid hormone for the development. If there is a decrease in the thyroid hormone at the primary stage of the development of the nervous system, it can lead to the cretinism, that is congenital deficiency of the T3 and T4, and that will cause the problem with the development of that particular child. Retardation and nervous deficit. Even in the adulthood also, if there is a decrease in the T3 and T4, it will cause a problem with the impaired intelligence as well.